He moved on in weeks. That's what everyone said. As if it was a weather update. As if it didn't slice something open inside me every time I heard it. He's already seeing someone. He looks happy. He posted pictures. Weeks. I stared at my phone one night, the screen glowing too bright in the dark, my heart racing for reasons I couldn't explain. I couldn't even sleep. Not because I missed him the way people assume you miss someone after a breakup. I missed the quiet. I missed the version of myself that didn't wake up at 2:17 a.m. with her chest tight, replaying conversations that would never get an ending. The night I found out he had moved on, I was sitting on the edge of my bed, wrapped in a blanket I hadn't washed since he left. Not because it smelled like him. Because it smelled like normal. My phone buzzed. A message from a friend. I didn't want you to hear it from someone else, but he's already with someone. Already. That word echoed louder than it should have. I typed back something calm. Something mature. Oh. Okay. Thanks for telling me. Then I put my phone face down and stared at the wall until my eyes burned. I didn't cry right away. That came later. At first, my body went still. Like it was waiting for instructions. I tried to sleep that night. I really did. I turned off the lights. Closed my eyes. Told myself, you're exhausted. You'll pass out any second. But my mind wouldn't let me. It kept showing me images I never asked for. Him laughing with someone else. Him saying the same things he once said to me. Him doing all the things I begged him to fix, with someone new. I rolled onto my side. Then my other side. Then my back. The clock glowed 3:04 a.m. I wondered how someone could move on so quickly while I felt like I was drowning in a body that refused to shut down. People like to say, everyone heals differently. But that didn't feel like healing. It felt like abandonment, all over again. During the day, I functioned. I got up. I worked. I smiled at the right moments. No one could tell that every sound felt too loud, every silence too heavy. At night, everything fell apart. That's when the thoughts came. What did she have that I didn't? Was I that easy to replace? Did he ever grieve us at all? I hated myself for thinking like that. I hated that my worth felt like it was suddenly up for debate. He had moved on in weeks. I couldn't even sleep. Not without jolting awake, heart racing, convinced I had forgotten something important. Not without checking my phone for messages that never came. Not without replaying the moment he said, I just need space. Space. Apparently, space meant freedom for him. And isolation for me. One night, around 4 a.m., I got out of bed and walked into the kitchen. The apartment was quiet in that eerie way that only exists when the world is asleep and you're not. I poured myself a glass of water and leaned against the counter, staring at nothing. My hands were shaking. I realized then that it wasn't just heartbreak. It was shock. My nervous system didn't understand how someone who once promised forever could detach so cleanly. I opened my phone again. Scrolled. Mistake. There it was. A photo. Him. Her. Smiling. The kind of smile people wear when they want the world to see how fine they are. My throat tightened. I put the phone down so fast it almost slipped out of my hand. That night, I cried. Not dramatic sobs. The quiet kind. The kind where you press your fist into your mouth so no one hears you, even though no one else is there. I cried because I felt stupid for still being broken. I cried because sleep felt like something other people were allowed to have. I cried because part of me wondered if I had imagined our connection. Because if it was real, how could he move on like that? The next morning, I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Dark circles. Tense jaw. Eyes that looked like they hadn't rested in weeks. I told myself, you have to get it together. But healing doesn't listen to commands. Friends tried to help. Maybe he moved on fast because he can't be alone. Rebounds don't last. You're better off. I nodded. Smiled. Said the right things. But none of that helped at 2 a.m. None of that quieted the moment my body realized it was alone in bed for the 100th night in a row. I started dreading nighttime. The sun going down felt like a warning. Because night meant memories. Night meant questions with no answers. Night meant lying in the dark, staring at the ceiling, wondering how someone could replace you while you were still learning how to breathe without them. I tried everything. Herbal teas. Meditation apps. White noise. Nothing worked. My body refused to relax. It was like it didn't trust the world anymore. And then something small happened. One night, after hours of tossing and turning, I stopped fighting it. I sat up in bed, feet on the floor, and said out loud, "Okay. You're not sleeping. That's fine." It felt strange. Letting go of the pressure. I wrapped myself in a blanket and went to sit by the window. The city was quiet. Streetlights glowed. Somewhere, someone was laughing. Somewhere, he was probably sleeping next to someone new. And for the first time, instead of asking why, I asked something different. Why am I being so cruel to myself? Why am I measuring my healing against his escape? That question didn't fix anything overnight. But it cracked something open. I realized I wasn't failing at moving on. I was processing. I was grieving. I was letting my body feel what my mind had been trying to outrun. He moved on in weeks because he never sat in the silence. I was sitting in it. Every night. Feeling every sharp edge of what was lost. And maybe, that meant something. Maybe it meant I was doing it the hard way. The honest way. The way that doesn't look good on social media. The way that doesn't come with smiling photos or captions about new beginnings. The way that happens in the dark, alone, when no one is watching. That night, I didn't sleep much. But I stopped blaming myself for it. I lay there, breathing slowly, reminding myself that healing isn't a race. That numbness isn't strength. That moving on fast doesn't always mean moving on well. And as the sun began to rise, casting soft light across the room, I felt something shift. Not peace. Not closure. Just a small sense of permission. Permission to be where I was. Broken. Awake. Still standing. I didn't tell anyone how bad the nights were getting. During the day, I looked functional. At night, I unraveled. Sleep didn't just avoid me, it felt like it had chosen sides. My body would finally start to relax, that heavy feeling settling into my limbs, and then my chest would jolt awake like something terrible was about to happen. Nothing ever did. But my nervous system didn't know that. I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of a car passing outside, my heart beating too fast for a room this quiet. I started to dread the clock. Midnight meant disappointment. 2 a.m. meant panic. 4 a.m. meant exhaustion mixed with anger. I would think, he's sleeping right now. Peacefully. Next to someone else. And that thought would hit harder than any insult he'd ever said to me. Because it wasn't just that he moved on. It was that he looked rested. I, on the other hand, was falling apart in silence. I started comparing myself to her. Even though I'd never met her. I imagined her laughing easily. Sleeping deeply. Not replaying conversations in her head. I imagined him telling her, "I've never felt this way before." The same words. Different face. I hated that my mind did this to me. I hated that my self-worth had become so fragile that I measured it against a stranger. Some nights, I'd sit on the edge of the bed and bargain with myself. If you fall asleep now, tomorrow will be easier. If you don't check your phone, maybe your heart will calm down. Sometimes it worked. Mostly it didn't. I stopped scrolling his social media, but the damage was already done. Images stayed burned behind my eyes. I would close them and still see him smiling. Still see her hand on his arm. Still feel that sharp, humiliating thought, I wasn't enough to make him stay, but I was enough to hurt. One night, after 3 hours of lying awake, I stood up and walked into the bathroom. I turned on the light and looked at myself in the mirror. Really looked. My shoulders were tense. My jaw was clenched like I was holding back a scream. My eyes looked tired in a way that sleep alone wouldn't fix. I pressed my palms against the sink and whispered, "You're safe." It felt ridiculous. But I said it again. "You're safe. He's gone. You survived." Something in my chest cracked open. I slid down onto the floor and cried. Not about him. About me. About how hard I had been trying to be okay for everyone else. About how I kept telling myself I should be over it by now. About how unfair it felt that I was doing the work while he skipped straight to the reward. I cried until my breathing slowed. Until my body felt heavy instead of sharp. That night, I slept for almost 3 hours straight. It wasn't much. But it was the longest stretch I'd had in weeks. The next day, I realized something important. Sleep wasn't just about rest. It was about safety. My body didn't trust the world anymore. Every night felt like it had to stay alert, just in case more pain showed up unannounced. So I stopped trying to force sleep. Instead, I started building safety. Small things. I changed my sheets. Opened the window before bed. Put my phone in another room. I stopped replaying conversations on repeat and started writing them down. If my mind wanted to talk, I gave it paper. Some nights, I'd sit on the couch with a blanket and let myself be awake without judging it. I reminded myself that healing doesn't follow a schedule. That just because he moved on in weeks didn't mean he healed in weeks. It meant he avoided. I wasn't avoiding. I was feeling everything. And that mattered. One evening, a friend asked me, "Do you think you still love him?" I thought about it for a long time. I said slowly, I loved who I thought he was. And I'm grieving the version of myself that believed in that. That answer surprised even me. Because it was true. What kept me awake at night wasn't him. It was the loss of certainty. The loss of the future I had planned in my head. The loss of feeling chosen. And once I understood that, something shifted. Not dramatically. Quietly. I stopped checking the time when I woke up at night. Stopped counting hours like proof of failure. If I couldn't sleep, I rested. If I couldn't rest, I breathed. If I couldn't breathe calmly, I reminded myself, this feeling will pass. It always does. Some nights were still brutal. Some nights, my mind still wandered to him. But the thoughts didn't stay as long. They didn't sting as sharply. They came, and then they left. Weeks later, I noticed something unexpected. I slept through the night. I woke up confused at first. The light in the room felt unfamiliar. My body felt heavy in a good way. I checked the clock. 7:12 a.m. I laughed softly, alone in my bed. Not because everything was healed. But because my body had finally exhaled. I realized then that moving on isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It happens quietly, in moments like these. In a full night's sleep. In not reaching for your phone. In waking up without dread. He moved on in weeks. I couldn't even sleep. But I learned something important in those sleepless nights. I learned how strong I was when no one was watching. I learned that healing isn't about speed. It's about honesty. And I learned that one day, without forcing it, without chasing it, without comparing myself to anyone else. Rest finds you again. Not because you earned it. But because you finally let yourself be human. And that's when I knew. I wasn't behind. I was becoming.